Hello, everybody. We have over 330 guests from 45 countries joining us today for this in-session talk, the first in-session talk of 2025, Leading Service Design for Impact. Before introducing you to our guests, allow me to cover a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link to the recording after the event. We aim to have an interactive session today, and we invite you to ask questions in the Q&A button. You can upvote any questions you find interesting to hear answered by our panel. Please use the chat button if you have any technical difficulties regarding the webinar. Please join me in welcoming Nicolás, Eva, and Peter. I'm going to hand you over to Nicolás now, who's going to start today's conversation.
Great, thank you, Katie. Well, thank you, Eva and Peter, for joining us, and thank you for all the attendees and guests to being here today. So, welcome. I'm Nicolás Rebolledo. I'm a senior tutor in service design, where basically I lead the effort that we do around public sector and design in regulated industries. So, the purpose of the session today, I'm going to introduce the guests just in a while, but the purpose of the session today is to explore different perspectives around design leadership, specifically on what it entails to lead service design within organizations that not regularly are design-based. And I think this is very important for us because we've been running our program, the service design program, for the last 12, 13 years now. And I think in the evolution of what we've been researching and teaching here in RCA service design, we've also seen the evolution on how our former students, now colleagues, have become very influential in the way by which the organizations that employ them are transforming experiences and the services that they deliver. We've also experienced as well with our alumni how most of them are become really interesting and great design leaders, opening pathways within organizations for others to come. So today we want to discuss that, what that means, what that entails. And I think this is also building in a research piece that we've been doing together with EY Seren around, it's called Leading Design Works. And the purpose is what it entails to become a design leader and to be a design leader within a regulated industry. So first, I'm going to introduce Eva Guerra. I like your bio, Eva, because you said that you're a recovering architect and seasoned design leader. I'm also used to be an architect. That's an interesting thing, architects or service designers with a background in architecture.
I live inside of architecture, but I guess that doesn't really count.
So Eva, have design leaders with more than 25 years of experience, fluent in different design disciplines, or a proper designer, an expert on service design. And throughout your career, Eva, you're going to talk a little bit about that. You've experienced, different clients, different contexts, encountering different kind of challenges on how to use design for different purposes. And also we have Peter Neufeld. Peter Neufeld is a partner at EY, Ernst & Young, and also where he leads EY Seren. And what is interesting about Peter's been leading customer innovation and experience design, especially in financial sector, but also across regulated industries. So the experience of that Peter comes here is perhaps from a more corporate perspective, from a more, I would say, non-designer organizational background, how he's been leading the way and open up spaces for design and service design become more impactful in the clients that he has. So today, the way we're going to be doing this, there's a Q&A section there that you can ask questions, any questions of the things that we are being discussed. I will try to pick up some of those questions and make this basically an open conversation. So we want to start, perhaps, Eva, or a question for both, but perhaps you can start. I think if we were to start talking about, the impact of service design, what do you think is the primary value, or why people use service design in organizations that are not, design-based? What is the value that you think organizations sees in service design?
And just to clarify, when you say non-design organizations, you mean organizations that they don't trade or sell design, right?
Exactly, yeah, exactly, yeah.
That they might be that they might know what design is, but it's not their primary activity, to sell or to consume design services. This is a fascinating question for me, which I think it relates to anybody that can be on the call, from senior practitioners to people aspiring to know more about design. And for me, is the question of what design, like what is the value of design inside of organizations? And personally, I believe that design is brilliant for showing what's possible. As simple as that. Design can show you what is possible. And the value for organizations, it is really to understand, clarify paths when there is a shift in conditions for the organization and it's unclear how they can move forward, or there's a desire, for example, to understand and get closer to.
Sorry, Eva, we lost you just a little bit. If you can repeat that last thing you said, we just lost you a little bit. There you're back.
Yes. Yes, and the value of design as well. I was saying that design for me is showing what is possible, and I was giving examples in which this design approach could be useful, especially service design, when there's a shift in conditions for organizations and it's unclear for the organization how to move forward, when there is a challenge or a problem, and that requires creativity or empathy to actually bring different perspectives together, or when there's a desire to understand how to create the new of experiences, the new of services, and a new potential proposition from a business. So I think that every business in every sector goes through those cycles, goes through those moments of unclarity, of shift, of disruption, and therefore service design can be immensely valuable on those moments.
Very interesting. So the idea of showing that change is possible when organizations need to change or shift or create new value. And in your view, Peter, how that happens? How so if we have the capacity of design to show that things can be different, how you make that happen, or where's the value perceived there?
I think it's a good question, and I think even the concept of a non-design organization, I think, is a bit suspect. You might think about an organization that is yet to realize the fundamental role design already plays in what they do. It might be the absence of design in and of itself suggests something to the quality of the services they're delivering. But I think when I look at the work, like let's say that I've done in financial services, where you've got significant constraints within the organization. So you're operating in a legacy technology environment. There's legacy cultural constraints. There are regulatory constraints. There are economic and competitive constraints. And a lot of these organizations look at other competitors coming from non-traditional zones, delivering services of a much higher value to their customer, and a kind of expectation inflation in and around not only how a service experience should be delivered, but even expectation as to the kind of ethical position of the organization. Its focus on their financial well-being, its focus on sustainability become relevant. And I think what a lot of these organizations, these financial services institutions over the last decade have been looking to enrich their understanding of their customer. And they'll talk often about customer centricity, the need for a deeper understanding of customer to be more efficient in the way they deliver the service, and also be able to derive more value from their customer. And they perceive design as a fundamental function that can do that. But design within these organizations hasn't necessarily been an essential service. Like they'll have a chief financial officer, they'll have a chief compliance officer, they'll have a chief operating officer, a chief technology officer. They may or may not have a chief design officer. And if they do, if that chief design officer were to leave, they might not even choose to replace it. So there's a complicated relationship with the desire to be more customer centric and understanding that design is the function that does that. I think, Eva, you said empathy, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, in a very simple way, the magical power of design it is creative aesthetic capabilities, certainly, but it's also the ability to bring real customer insight into a room, and through the empathy that creates, help an organization really shift and focus and prioritize differently. And I think we see that happening quite a bit with design. And I think when we started what we're doing at EY with the Innovation Experience Design Group over a decade ago, the identification and acquisition of Saren as the first service design studio we brought in, it was clear to us that service design was the capability that these organizations required. They needed a insight-based, research-oriented, human-centered design function that could look across the front stage of complex services and products, because we're not talking about adding a product to a cart and checking out. We're talking about, can I afford to buy a home? I've had a family member pass away. What do I do with the debt they've accumulated? How do I manage financial difficulty? The interactions that we're talking about can be extraordinarily complex. And, we work across regulated sectors, so financial services, healthcare, government, energy. These are often complex service experiences that have high stakes, and they're heavily regulated because the stakes can be incredibly high. So, understanding that front stage experience, all the different channels and interaction and actors, but then being able to tie that to how the business actually operates and runs, its processes, its regulatory frameworks, its data structures, its technology, its regulatory and compliance frameworks, and how it measures that. And being able, through that kind of service blueprinting activity, to really articulate a future state and show how the organization can achieve it. And finally, I think when this is done really, really well, service design becomes a real accelerator to transformation, because you're able to do fewer things with a lot more confidence. In the absence of a human-centered service design orientation in transformation, you're building features and you're prioritizing them based on cost, value, complexity, any number of factors, but you're not prioritizing them on the human-centered customer value they're creating. So a lot of transformation agendas tend to fall over around cost. They don't realize benefits. And I would argue some of that has to do with the fact that this capability isn't being applied effectively, that we're not prioritizing the backlog based on real human insight, and we're not orienting the business case around behavior change. Because in a lot of these transformation portfolios, the business case is really going to be based on getting you, Nicolás, and Eva to go about doing something differently, whether that's selecting a particular product or choosing to interact with the service organization in a particular way. And I think, for me, service design, especially in these regulated contexts, especially in these legacy organizations, especially in these service experiences that are far more complicated than simple digital transactions like ordering a taxi or ordering food or buying a product on an online e-commerce site.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think there's a couple of questions in from the audience that I think can touches on this. I was thinking perhaps you can start, Eva. There's a question from Rhys Nilon. How do you position design as a strategic level for change when design is not seen as a change agent? And I think building on that, the second question of Alex Burdett, how do you package service design as a commercial service to an audience that doesn't know about design? So perhaps the question is, how do you start this process, basically? If no one have heard about service design and you have to make the case, in your experience, Eva, in your career being a leader in this field, what you can say about that? How you open up that space for service design?
Yeah, as well, very relevant and fascinating question. I think that the amount of acknowledgement and awareness of what service design is and does has increased, right? And we need to think that it's a very, very new discipline of design. 25 years ago, it didn't exist. 20 years ago, it was barely something. And now we are at a moment where there are BAs and masters in service design. So there's people who have been trained as a service designers, and we have a lot more organizations being aware of what service design is and what it can do. And the questions from Rhys and Alexander are really relevant, because it's how do you make a case for it, right? Like, how can you convince organizations that that's the way they need to go? And my view is that not every business challenge, is suitable for design, right? And this might be controversial because designers believe that we can do a lot, and we tend to take a lot more than probably what we are capable of, out of optimism and out of real passion for our craft. But I think that from my experience is to recognize that not every business challenge for actually do or have a service design.
You're cutting, Eva. Sorry. Let's
Sorry about that.
see if you can do something on your connection, perhaps.
Yes.
So, Peter?
Well, I from what I picked up, Eva, I couldn't agree more. I think selecting where you can be relevant is really important. And if I look at Reese and Alexander's question, I think, I think the first step, if you were getting started, is to find a place where you can really have impact. Find the pathfinder opportunity within your organization where your team of service designers, however small they are and perfectly formed, can be part of a program of work where you're going to have really significant impact, where you're able to kind of really show the organization where maybe you're taking a KYC AML process, maybe you're taking an onboarding journey for a new product for a small business owner, and you're really showing we can make it more efficient, we can make it easier for them to apply, we can, through testing and co-creation, we found ways to simplify it, we can increase the number of people that complete the application. We can make it easier for them to get answers to questions on the digital experience they have with the mobile app. And I think having that pathfinder that allows you to show really dramatic value and benefit. And then I think you've got to speak about the benefit in a commercial language. Like, I'll give you an example. Years ago, we did a piece of work where we redesigned a mortgage application for customers of buying a mortgage with an independent financial advisor, with a mortgage advisor. We did customer research with about 30 financial advisors. We reprioritized the backlog. We put document upload at the very beginning in the first release, because in speaking with IFAs and speaking also with customers, the ability to upload and manage documents was the number one issue they had with the existing approach. That had been deprioritized because it was quite complex piece of technology to implement at the time. It didn't exist inside the current data center. But we realized that was really, really important. Fast forward, we designed this new mortgage application end to end. We launched it within 1 year. It reduced the cost of applying for a mortgage and getting a mortgage by about 60%. So great amount of efficiency. And it increased lending by $3 billion the first year. Now, if we pulled one of the service designers who worked on that project onto this call today, I don't think they would tell you the commercial impact that it had. They would talk about the number of personas they created, the journey mapping activity. They would talk about the number of interviews. They would talk about the features that really worked for the customer, but not the commercial benefits. So I think the other thing we've got to do to make service design relevant, or to demonstrate its relevance, is to embrace the commercial impact that service design is having alongside the other capabilities it operates with. So I think that is so important. Less about explaining service design as a craft, as a set of tools and deliverables, and more as a way of accelerating and de-risking a viable, meaningful commercial outcome. And then based on those successes and based on that confidence in that articulation, I think you then begin to see an opportunity to scale. Another thing that Eva brought up about being specific, and I think in my experience, especially in these regulated sectors, service designers who also have the deep domain knowledge and skills in a particular product area are able to have extraordinary influence. So understanding customer, bringing empathy through, understanding the complexities of organization, assembling allies to work towards an outcome, co-creation, prototyping, but also understanding how the balance sheet for the product operates. So you can draw that golden thread from the financial results that you're trying to achieve to the commercial and customer benefit. So I think demonstrating and talking about the commercial success, being confidently embrace the commercial success you're having in service design, as well as being able to encourage service designers to really embrace and develop deep domain skills, because that's how you're really going to have the transformational impact you're looking for.
And in that note, I think just introducing you new questions that are coming here. So we've been talking a lot about how to show the relevance of design upwards, making the case within the organizations for decision makers. But now that you mentioned this, Peter, about the different, let's say, skills or capabilities that designers should have in this context, in your experience, how you lead on that difference, or each service designer who works in these organizations has to have the mix of the skills, or you have some of those that are more connected with the commercial elements, others that are more craft oriented, who are more worried about aesthetics. How, in your experience, what is that mix, and how you lead those teams that might be very diverse, especially creative teams?
Well, look, I don't think you can force everyone to be the same. That's certainly not what you want to do. And I think we need lots of vectors of diversity within these teams to have the result. So from a service design perspective, you might have people who are deeply craft oriented, who are exceptional in their capacity to articulate and storytell in the shaping of tools that are really effective. And I think what you want to ask them to do is to draw deeper relevance and understanding of the commercial connection to the work they're doing. You're going to have other people that are coming to service design through a product and through a commercial knowledge function. So for one of our clients, one of our banking clients, we're proposing training people from different parts of the business who understand operating model and product on service design skills and bringing them through a service design training program. So I think you pull people in from different parts of the organizations. One of our clients who's leading the service design customer centricity capability, her background is finance, but she understands the value that service design brings to it. So I think you want to work across those different dimensions. But I think for leadership, I think if you have service designers who want to really develop leadership in let's say one of these business contexts, you really do have to encourage them to develop these other skills in and around commercial impact, budgeting, like managerial principles that are going to be really, really important for that success. And that's not going to be for every single service designer. But I do think we should encourage designers to take on that challenge if they want it, because 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 are going to be leaders of organizations. Not everyone wants to do that, by the way. Some people, people have different value they extract from the work they do and different levels of ambition driving it. So I don't think it's a one size fits all, but I think we need to have pathways for designers who want to become business leaders within their sector to really drive that opportunity home. Otherwise, they're going to hit a bit of a glass ceiling in an organization if they have that ambition. And that's a disappointment because you lose really talented people as a result.
No, that's a very good point, because some of the insights that we have in the report that we did last year was this idea of balancing different cultures, so the design culture, and the integrative culture of the organization. So how you lead and navigate, the designer. I remember one of the leaders, the chief design officers, mentioned that the design leader being some sort of translator between two different culture, the decision culture of the C-suite, and then the design team, and how you maintain that team inspired, and doing design. In your view, Eva, what you would say about that? About how you can lead now for teams of designers, how you maintain the interest, and the curiosity of being a designer, perhaps in some certain context that might be more constrained and more business oriented. What is your view on that?
Oh, it's hopefully the internet is better. I've changed a couple
Yes.
of stuff. Great. Apologies again for that. And for me, leading service design as a practitioner, and probably this will resonate with any other people aspiring to leader. It's all about achieving balance, right? Particularly for design teams, is the balance of having one, interesting challenges to solve and do great quality work, with second, having a culture that is conducive for people to do their best work. So that is the role of culture. And three, being financially sustainable, or being value sustainable, right? If it's an internal team of designers. And the role of a leader is to always try to achieve this impossible balance, right? Across all these things. But also, when it comes to teams, there needs to be a continuous reflection of the role of the organization.
You're making a fantastic point too.
So sorry. I don't know why is actually blocking, but I would just say that the role of a leader is also resist the urge of short-termism, right? It is very, very tempting to try to solve any challenge that comes to you as a leader and say, if I only do this, it will turn this result, without looking at the unintended consequences of such decisions. I will leave it here so it doesn't froze anymore.
But that's
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. And I think you're touching what I understand, but is that you're touching also in this systemic approach or system thinking to try to. I think you touch on that, Peter, as well. The idea of having a wide view of the whole service and the complexity, and then basically lead on those things. There's a question from the audience that I think touches on that. Alexandra Willows, she says, when leading service design in government, when all public services are on fire and are linked in a million complex ways, how do you identify which fires to put out first, and how when they're all interconnected?
Oh, the world is on fire. That is probably an apt description. I think it's a great question, right? And I think I might enter into the answer, but why do people show up and do this job every day in organizations where it's very, very challenging? It might be easier to be a designer outside of the government, right? In another sector or industry where design is valued and the problems maybe have less stakes. But it might also mean that we're going into these organizations to be service designers because we have a bolder vision of what we want to achieve. We have some kind of purpose that we want to realize in the work that we do. And I think a number of small fires can be entirely overwhelming. And I think what you need to do is address the one that you can address that sits in front of you, that you have the capability and the capacity to understand. And I mean, gov.uk is a great example. I remember going back maybe a decade now. A great example of one small fire gov.uk put out was the application process for power of attorney. This had been a complex process. It didn't have to be. Policies had composted over time. People are in state, when someone goes for power of attorney as well, you end up being in a state of vulnerability by definition, right? Someone in your life who you really care about and love has lost the capacity to make decisions on their own, and you're stepping in to help them. So people typically at that point in time would go to a lawyer to have they would go to a legal assist to have the application filed. And they didn't have to do that. And they would spend anywhere from like 200 to 700 pounds on this. Gov.uk looked at it. They posted the policy over time. They absolutely simplified it. Anyone could go online, file the application, do it in a few minutes, confirm who they were. So one simple application on a website, some form fields, some description. Really straightforward, easy to use, helping people in deep states of vulnerability make a great decision for themselves and a family member they care about, and do that in a way that protects them from additional fees and non-essential services that come in because the service experience they're going through puts them into a vulnerable state. Now, I mean, that's the implication of one small fire, right? So I think actually, if you're in an organization where there are hundreds of small fires, you might turn that around. There might be a bit of a judo throw, and suddenly you've got a fantastic portfolio of human transformation and benefit you can realize And you start to prioritize and think through and take advantage of and the things that you can do, the things that you can achieve, and the evidence you can bring forward. I think the distinction in my mind in situations like that is to be very clear on what a transformation portfolio needs to achieve and what an innovation portfolio needs to achieve. Because I think sometimes as service designers, we can get this confused. An innovation portfolio, I want lots of ideas, I want lots of experiments, I want to learn, test, and evolve. And there are many things that I try that I won't do. And the value in them is what I've learned. I've learned that customers don't want to do that, or our organization can't tolerate it. And that knowledge becomes a really keen insight if I distribute it well. But that's not putting out any fires. That's just sort of creating insight. Transformation portfolio, you want to actually execute. You want to take something and develop a unit of transformation and change that you can take forward and achieve. And I think what's brilliant about the gov.uk case study is that's a publicly available case study. It's something they talked about on the years ago. They would talk about quite often. Is that you're able to take a single web page as a kind of design artifact, but that doesn't even come close to expressing the service impact and the human impact that's having. And I think that can be really powerful for a design team. The risk, I think, in a portfolio that's all a bunch of small fires is if you don't have control in terms of what you prioritize and focus on, if you don't have a measuring stick to determine where's the value opportunity that's going to be sustaining for you and your team, you'll take pride in, it will have the benefit that you need it to have, then it can become incredibly overwhelming. But, I think for me, it's if you can organize those little fires, find the ones like, ooh, I can solve that one. I can solve it in a very special way, and I'm confident I can finish it, and just move on from there. There will always be fires, by the way. Like you'll go to sleep and wake up in the morning, and the one you put out will be replaced by another one. I mean, I think that's just, becoming comfortable maybe also with the context of these legacy complex organizations. And it's the final thing I would say, it's a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it? So it's building your resilience and building the cadence of what you can achieve with the team that you're a part of within that organization, so you can have that longer term impact that I know you want to have when you're in a zone like that.
Thank you, Peter. I think that there's a lot of really interesting questions. I will try to cluster them a little bit. So there's a couple of questions that are connected to about the solution side of things. And I think the point that you just made about the transformation portfolio and innovation portfolio, I think that might be a good place to start answering this. So the question is, how do you measure the success of a service design project? Asked Mehdi Oliva. And I think it would be interesting to see those differences. And the second one is Srinka Tomasic. How do you make a decision which design is better for use? I have a lot of doubts whether make a design which are appealing or helpful. How do you prioritize appeal versus how helpful it is? I think that question happens a lot in terms of a design. So open to you guys, like those two, how you measure success of design depending on the context, and then how you prioritize or balance, appeal with usefulness or helpful. Perhaps Eva, if you want to.
Great questions. Let's see how far we can get.
Yeah.
Before I break up again. But what I was trying to say when we were talking about the business case of design, or service design in this case, is that there is no business case without a problem to solve, right? Like you need to be absolutely certain of what is the problem that you want to solve, and be very clear within yourself whether that is a challenge that is suitable for service design. So in other words, how do you prove the value of design is intrinsically attaching its outcome to the business value that it's creating. That's the outcome of service design. It is change. It is moving the needle of the organization. It is the clarity of direction in which this organization is going. It is better services. It is better customer experience. Is all those metrics. Those are the outcomes of service design. But we need to to learn how to talk about those outcomes and how to integrate it into the business or the context in which we are working, right? Sometimes it feels like we might be talking different languages. And service designers are great to work with constraints. And one of the constraints that we need to work is, what is the language that this business will understand and will accept and will be receptive for? And how can I communicate those things? So I do believe that education happens almost on the side of the project. It's not a direct
Almost there.
which I can talk to you, right? In other ways, we need to apply empathy as well towards our customers and understand that, they will not learn how do we communicate with them, and we need to come, a little bit around it. And so the second question about what do I prioritize? Do I prioritize the looks? Do I prioritize it is all of it. Unfortunately, that is what it needs to be prioritized. But, when you're talking about business decisions, I believe that service designers have an enormous power to really bring to the business leaders the options and guiding them and helping them to take those decisions, right? Like, we cannot do an amazing looking product without X or Y consequence, or, improving customer experience, it will cost us X or Y. And those trade-offs is not the role of design or designers to actually take decisions. It's the role of the business leaders to actually, and we are the facilitators of, these are your options. These are the tools for you to take a better decision, visualizing complexity or visualizing actually direction. So that will be my take. What is your take, Peter?
I like a lot of what you're saying there, and I think absolutely, like, doing the cultural ethnography on the organization that you're delivering sustainable change in, like understanding the culture that you're operating in, and what is the language of sort of authority and power you need to be using to achieve the result. I refer to that kind of as like, that's, to me, that's the commercial language of the organization. But also there'll be cultural components of it as well. And they will have a view on what design is as well. They will have when you step into any organization, even a non-design organization, as we talked about earlier in big quotes, they'll have had experiences with someone trying to do it before. They'll have perceptions of what it is and how it operates and works. I think that's absolutely right. I do think service design and design has a role in the choice and decision making. Like, I don't necessarily think that our only role is to present options. I think we can actually also show answers. I'll give you an example. Working with one of our clients years ago, they wanted to re-platform their savings business. And what they thought would be the easiest thing to do would be kind of quote unquote cut and paste it onto a new technical platform. But that turned out to be quite expensive and take a long time. So they brought us in to kind of understand, of the 280 odd features, like, how should they prioritize them? Because these were the business requirements. So we went through and took about 20 customers from their 3 biggest segments and went through prototypes of what a savings mobile app might look like and do. And we got from 280 down to 6 features. Open an account, close an account, move money in, move money out, see all my accounts in one place, download my tax information every year. That was the MVP. We designed it. We launched it in roughly 6 to 8 months, not the 3 years the other was going to take. And then suddenly the business realized, well, we can actually prioritize the next set of features we might launch by actually working with our customers and testing and evolving it. And that was a really profound transformation for the organization. And look, the ability to bring empathy into the room, the ability to sit at the table and be the one who's prioritizing the features based on like real customer behavior, as opposed to complexity or perceived business need, becomes, I think, really transformational. Because I think the other insight that I've had, having done this for quite a while now, is that the business case is based on behavior change. The business case is based on a customer doing something differently, picking my product over another product, using it in a different way, understanding it in a different way, preferring to use it in a different channel. And once you have that realization, the part of the business that understands customer behavior and changes customer behavior intentionally is design. I mean, design changes behavior. And design done wrong changes behavior in ways that are unintended. The desired path that's often spoken about, right, in some architectural concepts, right? You might design a beautiful park pathway, but if the shortest path is to cut across the park grass, that's what people are going to do. So there's something very interesting in how we, to me, the commercial language, the commercial equation is the pounds, pence, and percentages underscored by human behavior. And if I can evidence changes in behavior intentionally, then I can help the business case the business needs to achieve. I can drive efficiency. I can drive growth. But we need to teach designers how to do that. We need to teach, designers are already doing it. We need to teach them how to express it in a way that works within those different cultural, ethnographic constraints of the organization they're in, but speak commercially fundamentally, I think.
That's a very super interesting point. I think that there's like 3 or more questions that are touching on that tension. So the tension of, so for example, one says, it's anonymous, I think. Yeah, here, anonymous. Is CX taking over service design just as a business attractive approach? Then there's another one. If designers want to influence the organization, should they still call themselves designer, or is the title a hindrance to power? And there was another one. I can find it here. Here, Jonathan Hadlow. I really like this one. How would then you distinguish between business analyst role and a service design role, as this sounds like they are moving closer together? Can you say it? So what you were saying, Peter, about, okay, so what we are saying here is that Eva said, you put together, what you're doing with the business outcome, and then you're saying, how you can combine, the commercial language with the change of behavior and how you balance that. What you would say about what is special or distinctive in these multidisciplinary organizations about designers? So they call themselves designers, not? What is the difference between them and a business analyst?
I wouldn't change your name because you're worried about what people think about you. That would be the first thing. I think you need to have the courage to be distinct. I think design's superpower is it's a thoughtful arena, and I think it's powered by empathy. So it's the place where we bring real people and their experiences of the things that the organization we're part of is designing, whether they know it or not, and bring to life the impact of that and help the organization orient around that, whether it's feature prioritization or mission critical transformation. And I think designers are great storytellers, and I think the storytelling, it just needs to have multiple threads running. It's got to have a thread of what's that customer value and impact, and then a thread of what's that greater value and purpose that we're creating as a result, and then a thread that ties that to the commercial fundamentals of the organization. I don't think business analysts do that. And I don't think changing your name is the right thing to do either. I think I'd rather show up in the room and absolutely own being the leader of design than show up in the room and calling myself like critical solution functional, whatever, right? Like but I understand though that like it can be very, very difficult to stand up in a room in front of other people and testify to something that you really believe in when you know when you know many of them are going to doubt you. And I think the courage to lead and the courage to sort of find the place where you have the greatest confidence in what you do, which I would argue for me has always been, I've never had a problem with this because I'm always telling a story about this organization's customer, whom they tell me they value more than anything else, upon whom their entire business is based. And they've asked me to go out and understand them better and apply that to something that they're doing. So I'm bringing that message. And I think confidence, a deep breath, feet on the ground, confidence in what I'm delivering, and an absolute awareness and knowledge of the fact that I know this is valuable. And moving from that principle forward. I know in a lot of the organizations, the folks that are coming in are working in this can be really difficult. It can be really hard. Everyone's at a different career stage. Everyone has a different sort of capability and style, level of confidence. But I think finding those things that you know are true and real, knowing how they can be applied, and I think I'd say be the designer, I'd put it in all caps, maybe. I don't know, like.
Can I add something
Eva,
to that? I
Please.
think
yeah, go ahead.
really good what you're saying, Peter. One is like, I'm not sure why we tend to put so much emphasis on defining what we are. When I think of the best people that I've worked with, I tend to think of the results they got, of the quality of the work they produced, of the impact they've made. And I can frankly remember if they were senior, junior, mid-weight designers, chief designer officers, or consultants or business analysts. So it's an invitation to reflect and let drop a little bit of those mechanisms to validate your existence or your work, and focus on the quality of the work and focus on reflecting on where the impact can be more better placed, and let the work be your business card.
I love that. It reminds me as well. It used to be, coming out of the Second World War, when you looked at CEOs of blue chip companies, they worked in all the frontline roles the business had, right? They'd have worked in the bank branch. They'd have worked in one of the print facilities. Like, they would have been engaging with customers and understanding the complexity and the depth of the organization. Like, those original CEOs were almost service designers in their own right? They had done the ethnographic field research as to what their customer means within their organization. And I think service design is more important now than it was in a non-digital era, because now that customer is held behind like an invisible interface and is a set of digital transactions that can be difficult to access. And the ability, I think, for design to announce itself as a way of returning our sort of view back to who are these people who are the customers of our business, who are the users of our service, whom we exist in order to serve. I mean, service is at the heart of service design. And I think service is at the heart of what many of the organizations we support do. And there's a lot of value you can find, I think, in unpacking that concept of service. And to your point, Eva, like the outcomes you achieve in that, they can improve people's lives. They can help them make better choices and decisions for themselves and their families about their healthcare, about their finances, about how they access government services that are essential to their day-to-day lives. I mean, I think when you start thinking about the impact we can have, the craft is a craft of extraordinary human impact, I think. I get excited thinking about it. And it worries me that people feel design's under threat. They feel design is losing ground. I kind of feel like there's never been a more important time for service design and design in this human-centered way to really announce itself and to articulate clearly what it does very, very well. And again, someone said customer journey fatigue. It's not making customer journeys, right? It's changing people's lives. It's developing a deeper understanding of human need and how we serve it. I think we need more purpose. We need more focus on that outcome than on the deliverables we create, if I'm honest.
100%.
And sorry, go ahead, Eva.
No, and I would say, add to what Peter is saying, that again, we've moved the discipline of service design enormously over the last 15, 20 years, right? And we need to recognize that this shift on design, it also has to do with the maturity of design inside of businesses itself, right? It's not sufficient to actually talk about a cookie cutter process to actually make change. It has it has added complexity to the discipline, but it is adding interestingness, right, as well, on the level of challenges that we are able to tackle. And I will say that I could not agree more with what Peter was saying about that. Is really super pivotal that we focus on the business outcomes.
I wanted to touch on, well, we have little time, but I think some of the questions that are here, because there are many, but are about how we keep relevant, how we can keep service design relevant. There's some other questions about upskilling, what the new things to learn. I think what you touch here in behavioral-led design, Timothy Harris said, interesting, how to know more about that. So my question is for you both, how do you see the next stage? So we've been evolving the practice, as you said, 15 years, 20 years. What do we need to do, or what are the new challenges that you say to our audience to keep service design relevant and move it forward? So
can I start, Peter, and then
please.
Right. So I feel like obviously upskilling, we are at one of the best institutions of the world who is a pioneer on thinking about service design and how it is applied in the world. So definitely there's one route about taking courses or adding a master's or something like that, going the academic route. But also I feel that more than ever, service design is a little bit about what do you do, what the maps that you create, the blueprints, the research, all that. And a lot about the conditions inside of organizations for design to be effective, to be valuable, and to be visible, and to be impactful. So if you are an agent of change, and Peter has been talking about, the culture and the ethnography and how do you connect this to behavioral change, to be an effective service designer, you need to understand the context in which this work is going to live. That means that you will need to understand systems, you will need to understand a little bit of psychology, a little bit. So almost like we need to keep adding the tools that will help us to assess and read the context effectively for change to happen. But it is a little bit of doing and a lot of creating. As the more senior you are, and if you become a leader in service design, it is about creating those right conditions for design to live and to make the impact it has to do. What do you think, Peter?
I totally agree. I think understanding that context is super critical. And I think if you're going to have impact, you have to understand what it is you're changing. Whilst at the same time, maybe a lot of things that present themselves as constraints are just legacy cultural perspectives. And I think that's another real interesting challenge for the kind of design that we're talking about. How do I help organizations break through their own biases to uncover the thing they could do even more brilliantly than they do today? I also think, I think a lot of designers feel under threat by the role that AI is playing in creative content production. And I think at moments like this, I like to come back to the things when the entire world feels like it's a portfolio of small fires, maybe big fires. I like to come back and think about the things that I know to be true that I believe won't change in the work that I do. I know my clients will want to work with people who are intelligent, who care about their business and behave ethically. I think they'll want to work with people. I think designers will always want to understand what real people, real customers are doing, how they're using these new tools, and how we can make them work better for them. So, for example, in our team, we do a human signal study every year. This year, in response to all the Gen AI excitement, we took 30 customers through a future agentic AI prototype of how a bank might serve them, and asked them, well, would you use it? How would you feel using it? What would need to be important for you if you were to use it? So, we, even in the context of this radical technology change, we're doubling down on trying to understand current state customer behavior how it's going to shift and change, and the role design plays in, again, influencing and shaping that culture, shaping that behavior, rather. So to me, I think it's almost right now getting back to a real clarity of what the most fundamental primary tools of design are, like understanding customers, articulating that, structuring that, applying that to changes in services, prototyping, testing, and evolving. And then once you get it right, scaling it for the broadest, most meaningful impact. And to me, to get the scale, that's why the commercial aspect is so important. I think getting the organization to make the commitment to change it, they need to see the evidence that it will work and understand the commercial impact it will have. So for me, especially, I think more than ever now, it's about getting back to those real basics, those absolute points of clarity. And I think, there are new tools coming around that are going to help us do that a lot more meaningfully and a lot more quickly. And that's fantastic. But I think it's a time for designers to renew their confidence in what that really means to be a designer.
Great. That's a very good place to stop. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you very much, Eva, Peter, for joining us. I also would say that as part of the work we're doing with Leading Design Works, you can go to leadingdesign.works. I just put the link there. You can join our mailing list. I think we're going to have a series of events during the year and discussing this issue. So please join this community and see you soon. Katie?
We will share a link to the recording of the session with everyone who registered for the event. If you want to find out more, Nicolás will be leading our Service Design Masterclass in April 2025, and Eva will also be joining that masterclass. So we have a few spots left. We've placed a link in the Q&A if you'd like to find out more. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.